Hello, how are you? Today I'm going to explain what happens in your body when you take a spoonful of olive oil at 4 in the afternoon, especially if you feel very hungry at the end of the day, if you overeat at dinner, if you have trouble losing weight, or if you suffer from constipation. You can really benefit from this strategy. I'll tell you exactly why this is so interesting for our bodies and who should be careful. You're going to love this video. Stay until the end because you won't want to miss it. Before we start, I want to ask you what you usually have for an afternoon snack. Do you have the habit of stopping to have this afternoon snack or not? Usually, you don't eat anything. Sometimes you just nibble on something when you're out. You don't plan ahead. You don't organize yourself. How does that work for you? Write it for me down here in the comments. If you can, go ahead and leave your like on the video. That's really important for me here on YouTube. This shows YouTube that you support the channel and trust my content. It's super important for us to talk more about this afternoon snack time because this time around 4 o'clock, between 3 and 5 in the afternoon, there's a very particular metabolic window in our bodies, and many people don't know about this. It's not that there's a magic clock in our bodies, but there is a physiological pattern that's quite common at this time when cortisol, which is the hormone linked to energy and alertness, starts to drop, and the glucose from that lunch we had, a bigger meal, has already been partially used up. So normally what happens is that we start to have the hunger hormone, ghrelin, being secreted in greater amounts at this time. And dopamine, which is related to motivation and reward, starts to drop during this period for many people. So the practical result is well known. That's why at this time we feel like eating. And it's not just eating anything. It's usually something sweet, some bread, a coffee with something crunchy, something quick. So it's not a lack of willpower. That's not why you feel like eating something at this time. It's actually physiological. And it's the moment when our brain becomes more sensitive to the appeal of food rewards. We look for something that not only satisfies us, but is actually tasty. And that's where many people go wrong, because when we consume a large amount of simple carbohydrates at this time of day, we end up having a spike in glucose, a spike in insulin, which can then rebound into a drop in insulin, a drop in glucose, and then there's a very predictable sequence where we start to feel very hungry. This stimulates us to look for more and more food. So, the healthy fat that's in olive oil can help with this. But of course, olive oil isn't just fat. Let's talk about that too. When we talk about consuming olive oil, it should preferably be extra virgin olive oil of good quality, because in addition to the fat, which is already a naturally very healthy fat, it also contains bioactive compounds that change this metabolic and inflammatory signaling. Among all the compounds present in olive oil, we have oleic acid, which is a monounsaturated fat. It also has polyphenols, which are antioxidants. Cantal oil, in particular, has a natural anti-inflammatory action. Olive oil also contains vitamin E and squalene. So, oleic acid makes up a large part of the fat in olive oil, and it's not just energy. When we think of fat, we think of calories, of energy, but this type of healthy fat also acts as a metabolic signaler. So this is very important, especially around 4 in the afternoon, because it's not just about filling a gap. Olive oil at this time serves to prepare for what will happen in the next few hours in relation to dinner, sleep, blood sugar throughout the night, and even the eating behavior we'll have later in the day. So let's talk more about this. Of course, the first major benefit has to do with the control of blood glucose that you'll have throughout the afternoon. When you add such a healthy fat like this, you slow down gastric emptying, and with that, every food you eat, because you're not going to eat or take a spoonful of pure olive oil as a snack. I'll talk more about this for you later. But every food you eat together with this olive oil will move more slowly from the stomach to the intestine, and from the intestine into the bloodstream. With this, we can even improve satiety signals, especially CCK, which changes the speed of gastric emptying. This hormone is so important. So, as the intestine and stomach will be emptying more slowly, the absorption of carbohydrates from this meal will also be slower. Blood glucose levels also rise more slowly, which helps reduce glycemic spikes. So, especially if you need to control your blood sugar, if you have prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, or even type 1 diabetes and are being monitored, or if you just want a healthier life and want to avoid those insulin and glucose spikes, olive oil can really help you in that regard. Another point is related to the feeling of satiety itself, because olive oil actually takes longer to move from the stomach to the intestine, so it stays in your stomach for a longer time. So, the tendency is that you'll feel less like snacking after this meal, and especially that you'll arrive at dinner less hungry. We know that when you come to a meal less hungry, you're able to make more conscious choices and of course eat a smaller amount. And this also helps you keep your glucose levels stable during the night by making good choices at dinner and eating a smaller amount of food at that time, which helps maintain more stable blood sugar levels throughout the night as well. And that's a very interesting point. Since we're also talking about reducing the amount of food consumed during the nighttime period, we know that this can help with the process of losing weight or maintaining body weight. Many people are able to stick to their diet perfectly until the end of the afternoon, having a balanced breakfast, a planned lunch, but when it comes to the afternoon snacks, sometimes they start to slip up because they didn't plan ahead. And when evening comes, they're so hungry that they can't control it. Olive oil at that 4 o'clock in the afternoon moment can help you feel full, help you control your next meal, and specifically help you avoid overeating, which contributes to weight loss. It's worth emphasizing that it's not that olive oil has a thermogenic or weight loss effect. On the contrary, we know that olive oil contains calories. Even though it's a very healthy calorie, 1 tablespoon of olive oil is around 100 to 110 calories. So what I'm saying here is not that olive oil will make you lose weight because of some thermogenic component it has, but rather that it helps you lose weight by controlling your blood sugar and also by helping you eat less at your next meal, which can make your total daily intake lower. It's also worth noting that when we think about controlling that afternoon snack, it definitely makes a lot of sense because at that time, closer to the end of the evening, our metabolism usually slows down. We're not going to be very active and we're just a few hours away from a full night's rest. So it's worth paying attention to what we consume at that time. And that's usually when people slip up and can run into problems. Besides that, we know that olive oil is a staple. It's part of the foundation of the Mediterranean diet and is truly considered in the Mediterranean region as liquid gold. It is considered this way because of the many benefits it brings. And many observational studies have already found that olive oil can help with longevity, disease prevention, and in short, with living a longer life. So it's really worth adding it to our diet. Regarding the issue of the gut of intestinal health, specifically adding olive oil at this time of the afternoon, which many people don't do, can be very interesting because we start to stimulate the gastrocolic reflex. Whenever we eat, especially when fat enters the digestive tract, the intestine receives a signal. Get ready to move, food has arrived here, and fat ends up being very interesting because it helps to moisten the stool. It helps make the stool easier to pass, prevents constipation, and even in cases of people who have been constipated and dried out for many days, it can help prevent fissures during bowel movements. Sometimes you go so many days with drier stools that they end up hard to pass. Water reabsorption happens in the large intestine, especially in the final section before the rectum. And if you go many days without having a bowel movement, you reabsorb more and more water from the stool, which can make it hard and difficult to pass. And the fat in olive oil can help in this regard. It's not that the fat replaces water, not at all. You still need to keep yourself well hydrated. But the fat helps to moisten, to make the stool softer so it makes things easier. And we know that the digestive process takes hours. A stimulus that you start giving your body at 4 o'clock isn't going to take effect in just a few minutes. So really, it helps to regulate your intestinal transit throughout the day and night, and it can result in a smoother bowel movement the next morning. So it's important to have this routine to maintain this consistency. This time can be very interesting for many people, so that the next morning you already feel the urge to have a bowel movement and are able to do it in a smoother way. At this time, between 3 and 6 in the afternoon, we also start to experience all those hormonal changes I mentioned to you, related to the decrease in cortisol and changes in dopamine. So we start craving that reward, we begin to want something sweet, something pleasant, maybe crunchy, something really palatable and tasty to satisfy that feeling. The brain senses this drop in dopamine and this fatigue. So when you consume more sugar at this moment, you might get that glucose and dopamine spike I mentioned to you, followed by that sharp drop, which can increase irritability, food-related anxiety, and the craving for rewards during this period at night, even after dinner. That urge to eat something that just keeps going throughout the night. When we consume a healthy fat like olive oil at around 4 in the afternoon, in this context, it can also help stabilize the neurological part of the brain and everything else. First, because it doesn't cause a glucose spike, as I've already mentioned, and second, because of the polyphenols in oleocanthal, which have anti-inflammatory effects. Oleic acid also influences the fluidity of neuronal membranes. So, when this membrane is more fluid, communication between neurons tends to be more efficient, and this is associated with better stability in the signaling of these nerve stimuli. Therefore, consuming olive oil at this time in the afternoon can also help with brain health, overall neurological health in a complementary way. So, who will benefit the most from consuming olive oil at this specific time? Of course, people who need to control their blood sugar and prevent glucose spikes will always benefit. People who have insulin resistance and so on as well. Women going through the climacteric phase in perimenopause also tend to benefit from olive oil at this time. Those who want to reduce nighttime glucose spikes, those who practice intermittent fasting and reach the end of the day with disproportionate hunger and have more difficulty controlling their eating can also benefit in this regard. Even people who have more difficulty controlling their appetite at night can benefit from including olive oil at this time as part of their routine. Of course, like anything else, some people need to be careful, especially if you have gallstones, if you have gallbladder problems, if you already have any health condition and are unsure if this is the best time or when to take olive oil, talk to your nutritionist or your doctor in your city. Remember that this video is purely informational. So how can you add this in a way that helps you optimize this metabolic aspect? Because obviously you're not going to swap your afternoon snack for just a plain spoonful of olive oil. Even though it's a significant amount of calories, about 100, a little over 100 calories, no one is going to be able to have a spoonful of olive oil as a snack, and obviously that's not the idea. The idea is for you to add a food that goes well with olive oil, but also gives you more glycemic stability. So, for example, you can make a nice little salad with tomatoes, basil, cheese, and drizzle olive oil on top. You can have a chickpea spread with olive oil and some vegetables like carrots or cucumber. Even bell pepper works well at this time. You can also make a ricotta spread with tuna, scallions, and add olive oil to it. It's very refreshing and very tasty. So that's the idea, to add it to a meal with a smaller amount of carbohydrates and more control, with fiber, with protein, so it can help stabilize things in a broader way. Now, something else that's worth mentioning is, Patricia, can I toast some white bread and put olive oil on it? Of course, it's better than plain white bread, but remember that if you consume a large amount of carbohydrates, I'm not talking about just one slice, but a lot, like a whole baguette or 2 rolls with olive oil, you're adding it to something that already causes an insulin spike and is higher in calories. So that's not really the point. The idea is for you to try to make some changes to your diet because olive oil doesn't replace things. It's not a free pass for you to keep the rest of your diet unbalanced. In a balanced and mindful way, it helps you a lot, but only if you also make meaningful changes for your health. Tell me, what would you eat as a snack with your olive oil? Do you already use olive oil at this time and feel that it really satisfies you, helps your digestion, helps with focus, with your brain? How does it work for you? Write it for me down here in the comments. I would love to read your comment. Remember to like the video, that's very important to me, and to share it with anyone you think will benefit, with anyone who would like this information. Let's work to expand this chain of kindness. That's what I want with the channel. See you next time. Bye.